Are you following the Mark Miller and sort of the death of comics conversation online at all?
I've, I despair. I despair. I mean, the original post by the original, I don't know the person's name who's on YouTube. Um, insert comic shop owner on YouTube that did his rant. Um, I was kind of hoping that it had just been misinterpreted.
Mhm.
I'd kind of hope, oh well, what he really means is insert logical discussion. But so I thought the inference of what he was suggesting was, because I heard about it secondhand initially,
Yep.
that he thought that people were investing too much of themselves in the characters, and certain characters who have got a long history have a set group of behaviors, just like a normal human would have, that they wouldn't suddenly do something completely out of character, and that's just discordant and strange. Now, to a certain extent, I would agree with that. If I've been X person for the last 75 years, I wouldn't, without any preamble or reasoning or lead up, just completely do something entirely out of character for no reason. So if I wouldn't do it and a normal human wouldn't do it, why should a comic book character do it? So I thought that was kind of the vibe, but it
Yep.
wasn't.
Mm.
What the vibe was is leave our precious things alone, because the thing that I liked X years ago should look exactly the same as that forever. And then all the idiots, then even if this original poster was making a legitimate reasoned argument, and he didn't, because he started ranting and raving and making up names for things and saying that all new comics were rubbish and no one was interested in them, and I mean, patently nonsense.
Hmm.
I mean, any medium dies if you stop innovating.
Yeah.
It dies. The whole purpose of the comics book industry from its inception, and to suddenly think that we're talking about politics in comics and it's some massive woke revolution, what a load of nonsense. People have been talking about politics since the very first comic book hit the newsstands. It's
Yep.
been the main topic of everything is politics. Did you read the X-Men? Did you not get it?
Yeah.
I mean, what a load of nonsense. And it really winds me up when people start talking about people being woke.
Do
Right,
you,
okay.
do you think any of that matters to the economics of the comics industry and retailers, or do you think it's as simple as, many retailers are having a tough time and challenges because it's just simple energy costs, cost of living is going up, everything, cost of
Low
everything is
hanging
going up.
fruit. I think it's low hanging fruit.
Ah,
When things are difficult, you start to look at the easiest thing for you to blame.
mm,
I would love, I mean, things are difficult. They're as difficult or more difficult for me in my store as any other store. Um, if I could point to a single thing and say, if that changed, our lives would change, then I would be delighted if I could do that. But I'm not going to mistakenly delude myself into thinking there's any particular thing is the cause of the current ills in the comics book industry. The current ills in the comic book industry are not just exclusive to the comics book industry. They're across all industries. Are there terrible stories out there? I'm absolutely certain there are, just as I'm equally as certain that there are magnificent stories out there. Were there great stories in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s and 2000s? Definitely. Has the quota of good quality to bad quality shifted? I doubt it. I think it's probably been the same forever. There will always be great, there will always be okay, and there will always be terrible. This current hobby horse of terrible is anything new, innovative, challenging, different. It's easy to blame these things. It's easy to pillory people who are doing these things for being experimental with the thing that you find precious.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not blind to the fact that some of this anger is based on being deeply, deeply passionate about a particular character or genre.
Of course.
But I would implore people to not let that passion drift into not allowing that character room to breathe, room to develop, room to room to fail, room to try different things, room to be kooky.
Yeah.
Or out of character. You know, new writers and established writers, new artists and established artists, massive publishers and new publishers just starting out, they cannot stand still. This is a fast-moving industry. There's thousands of new product every single week. You have to stand out from the crowd, and that's not an easy thing to do. And even Batman, and even Amazing Spider-Man, and even Superman, there has to be an evolution there. It's not as if the comic industry isn't good at rolling back and pretending it didn't happen.
It's only happened once or twice.
I mean, if you don't like it, just wait 6 months. It's not happened.
Yeah.
So let people do the different thing. And yes, if it's not for you, just in the same way as it's always been, if a particular writer or a particular artist goes on to a long-running series, you might not just chime with that artist's style. You might not like that writer's style of writing, and it goes off the boil for you a little bit. And you might keep on getting them just because you're a collector and you don't want to miss an issue. But really, they just sit in your to-be-read pile. And you never ever get round to reading them because you're not into that person. Or you might just cancel it for a little while until a new team goes on that title.
Yep, that's right.
Don't crucify the comics books industry. Don't attack the writers and artists for being innovators. We'll be nowhere. The comics book industry is, in fact, dead already if it cannot allow innovation.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And that's well said as well. If you could, maybe wave a magic wand and help comic book retailers for 2024, is there anything you would change? Anything you would say, I would love to see this change? And it would help all of us.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I think it's floppies should not be between $5 and $9.
Okay.
That's too much.
Okay.
Too much to expect someone to come in and pay $5 or $5, because it's really the equivalent in the UK almost. A $5 comic is kind of almost £5 in the UK.
Yeah.
It's
what would you price? What would you price it at? What?
$3.
Okay.
You know what? And if that means a slight reduction in the quality of the card stock they use for the covers, great. Then reduce the quality of the card stock for the covers. If that means that there has to be difficult decisions made by major publishers on characters who are legacy characters, but really they don't have a readership, then perhaps economies of scale mean that those have to not be published right now until you find a really innovative, interesting story to tell with those characters. A crossover. I mean, crossovers have always been and always will be a marketing campaign.
Yeah.
We call them crossovers. They're not crossovers. They're marketing campaigns. That is what they are. There is no reason for Blue Beetle to suddenly appear in a story with Batman tangentially in one frame of one page, and for that to become part of a major summer event, right? Look, nobody's going to buy Blue Beetle. Give it up. So
Shots fired at Blue Beetle. I like it.
they need to there has to be difficult decisions made. It's a low margin industry, and the margin for the major publishers must be wafer thin. I can't
Yeah.
imagine how much money they're making on a single issue of a floppy, but it won't be very much. There cannot be a lot of money in that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do think some titles are going to have a hiatus. I think that is reasonable to have a hiatus.
Yeah, you may not be alone with that idea. So we're getting this is a fantastic conversation. I want to ask you one more question, and then we can wrap this up. Like I said, I want to be aware of your time. I want to end on an optimistic note. This has been amazing. 2024, it's right around the corner, just a couple of weeks, couple of days, really. What do you have to look forward to in 2024? Is there anything you want to try? What's the silver lining on the horizon with all of this?
There's always something else. There's always something that you used to do that you've forgotten about, that you think, why on earth did we stop doing that? We replaced it with something else that didn't work. But what we're going to do is we're going to up our community engagement next year. I think that we haven't taken our eye off the ball with community engagement, but we've used the lack of space in our physical location as a reason or an excuse for not engaging with people outside of the normal business hours as much as we used to. So that's definitely going to be something that changes. The thing that we cannot speak of,
right? Yes.
may also be a thing that's happening.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
We're going to be engaging people more directly via our communication channels. So we're going to be putting together a monthly newsletter that's going to identify particular things that are coming up in the next few months that people may be interested in. And we're also going to be doing more Facebook videos. So new release videos, rather than just showing people pictures and giving a synopsis. We're going to get out there and we're going to chat about it.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and persuade Sinead that that she is definitely the person to do that rather than me.
Okay.
I think the face of the store needs to not be a 50-something man with a beard and specs, a balding comic shop owner with beard. Insert generic comic shop owner.
Yeah, we've never seen that before with a comic shop owner.
Absolutely not. You would never pick me out of a lineup of comic shop owners. So yeah, I think that it would be lovely if the face of the shop was Sinead, because she really is the driving force behind the shop. She's the one with her finger on all the new up and coming artists and writers, all the new stories that are worth reading. She really knows her stuff much more than I do, and much more than Louise does. So yeah, I think that will help the store as well. And really, we're hoping for a slightly better economic situation generally, which would go to helping everyone we know.
Yeah.
We know if we are suffering as a store, and therefore suffering as individuals, so is everyone else. And irrespective of where you start from, having less than you used to is unpleasant.
Yeah.
And uncomfortable. So what we would wish is that people get back to having what they used to have in the first instance, but also keep a hold of the fact that despite the Mark Miller thing and the comics being too expensive and the distribution problems, at the core of this, we're selling something that's inherently beautiful and wonderful and essential to human life, which is imagination and hope. And every time you open up a new book or comic, there's a potential for anything to be happening within those pages. Now, we don't know where that person's life is at that moment, but that has the potential to take them out of that moment into something magical. And that's what I sell for a living.
Wow.
And selling that potential is the greatest honor that I could have.